So I'm going to try and post another video here. It is April 14th, 2026. I must admit the commentaries by those spying in on all my phone calls in Canada outside of the entities where the privacy of the phone calls is actually directed is really quite shocking. And the responses by Canada are showing up in, I don't know, 5 or 6 different Aries horoscopes by MSN alone, as well as the Huffington Post. Canada's responses. And then there's the last 4 or 5 days since the 13th of all these visions I've been having in the daytime when I have my nap. Most of them, including the one I had this morning, are all threats against me by Canada. However, stating that, it must be understood that that now apparently the United States government has the technology to be able to plant messages in people's minds when they're sleeping. Now, I've heard about this form of satanic technology, and that is certainly within the weight of a possibility. But the bottom line is, in all the visions, I'm dead. So death by arrest and criminal charge seems to be the applause of these visions. Okay, well, first there was Trump, then there was Trump, Donald Trump right in my face in some kind of construction yard with me in a bulldozer bucket telling me it's over for me. And then there was the other one, the next one after that was someone was going to break into our house. Well, the one before Donald Trump was a Hell's Angel. Well, the first one was this Hell's Angel coming up to me in vision in my sleep. I was sitting with someone outside, some person, not my wife, and he just walked up to me. He was Italian with tattoos all over his back and leather vest, and just came up to me and pointed his finger at me in the vision and said, "You're a dead man if you talk about us again. We are not at all bothering you." Well, that's true, at least here, to some extent. But then, if that's true, then who are these lowlife on the streets that have caused my wife and I a lot of threats and intimidation here where we live in person, and with, those kinds of stares that, where they like to remind you without witnesses that, that they really want to hurt you. I had a friend of mine, he was a friend, I haven't seen him in ages, from the area here. I won't say his name. He told me a couple of years ago in the summer here when we were having a beer that if I didn't shut my mouth, 10 of them were going to come down and beat me up with baseball bats. I had the same statement made to me by, a questionable character here in the Vanier, Ottawa area, telling me that they want to beat me with baseball bats, and told me that my scooter has been targeted and to keep it within eyesight everywhere I park it, because they're going to steal it. This element told me that all the people at the Ottawa Inn Hotel hated my wife and I. Stuff like that happened last year, and the year before, and the year before. And more recently, the visions. First it was the Hell's Angel, then it was Donald Trump. I explained that already, I won't explain it again. And then there was somebody's going to break into our house and kill us. Had the vision, I was putting things up against our door, including, for some oddball reason or another, one of my propane bottles. I don't know why I was doing that for, but anyway, that was a vision where they're going to break in. My wife and I have had several of these visions in our sleep of them breaking in to kill us. Then we have the government and the police also trying to kill us. We're constantly under surveillance. We're constantly, they're out to arrest us all the time. And these are all the gangs in the police, and the neo-Nazi colonials and their Parliament Hill. We've been threatened for over, a decade, trying to bring our evidence forward. Is always signals the government likes to use in the horoscopes against my wife and I, and that's been going on a very long time. There is no doubt about it. How do my wife and I know? Well, they start putting statements in the horoscopes that reflect something my wife said to me or I said to her in our house here without anything being on. And so that's their way of letting us know that they're hearing our discussion threads within our house, which is also a violation of our right to privacy. Threats of arrest. I mean, you know, it's just really sickening. The limitations on people accessing our YouTube videos. I posted 4 videos on my wife's account 4 years ago. I didn't have an account on YouTube. It's Jennifer Fitzgerald, I believe, the Jennifer Fitzgerald at 8908, I think it is. The newest one for my wife, it's Jennifer Fitzgerald 5. I got it here. Actually, I wrote it down somewhere. So I don't even remember where I wrote it down. I'm kind of tired. Just have to look. It's on one of these pages, I believe. Let's see. Where is she here? I think I've got time to do this video now that I've erased a lot of the stuff in the phone. So, I'll write it down here. I'm just trying to see here if I've... No, that's the phone numbers. What about this page? Might be on a little one. Oh, Jennifer, it's J5U. Jennifer Fitzgerald, small dash J5U on YouTube. Her old address was 8908 or something like that. Now, I had posted 4 videos 4 years ago about the Nuremberg laws. And within the context of those videos, I also showed pictures of our boat in the mud on the Richelieu River because they lowered the Richelieu River on my wife and I. The province did that of Quebec so that we couldn't go anywhere in our boat. I'd like to point out here, I don't want to branch too far off, but all of these actions against us regarding our transportation is one of the allegations that Canada's used most of the Nuremberg laws, if not practically all of them. And they used all of them except for 2. And one of the ones they didn't use was the one law by Adolf Hitler where Jews were not allowed to marry outside their race. Okay? That was one of them, and there's one other that's not in my list. I added one of them into the Nuremberg laws list, and one of them I took out, so it's not there. Okay, other than the 2, all of them they applied, and one of the big ones is that Jews were not allowed transportation, and there's been significant attacks on our modes of transportation. They attacked our boat's engines, either by coming on board when we weren't there and damaging my engines, and then it was EMP pulsers pulsing the engines in our boat, shutting it down on the Richelieu River in 2015. Then the damage to our 2 small outboard motors for our dinghy, putting water in the fuel tanks of our outboard motors on our dinghies while we were sleeping at night and the dinghy was tied up to the back of the boat. This doesn't happen to anyone else here on the river system, just us, okay? And then the attacks on my scooter. You know, like I told you earlier, this guy told me last year they want to steal my scooter, and the minute I have my eyes off it, it's going to disappear. Well, again, this is the Hitler Nuremberg law of stealing our transportation, so we just don't have any. Like this is the motive behind those activities, and it's neo-Nazis in the police and their gangster friends in the police that are going to street criminals to do these things to deny us our right of movement. The other thing too is they know that my knees are bad, and I can't walk very far. So this is all about denying me and my wife our right to move. Okay, they attacked my scooter with some kind of pulsing device. They wrecked my brand new scooter motor I bought a few years ago. I drove down the street, I put it on, boom. The motor exploded and wouldn't work anymore. Then I went to the Russian embassy with signs. They asked me to come, and I was headed there for a 4th time with my signs, and something hit my scooter, an electronic pulse of some kind, and lit the wiring on fire. That's what happened. So, there's been a constant attack on all forms of transportation. Nothing's changed there. The last few days it's been slightly warmer, and I expect it to them to attack the scooter. I ordered batteries from Amazon, brand new lithium batteries. The seller told me I'd get 70 kilometers from both of them together, and I'm getting barely 10 kilometers out of one and 4 out of the other. Okay, so this is all an attempt to stop me from being able to travel, and my wife as well. The reason why is they're trying to kill us. The policy here in this country is to arrest my wife and I and kill us. That's their policy. They hone in on everything we're saying. I mean, they're listening to my phone calls. They're watching my emails and the things I'm writing. And they're just needling everything we do and say, in the hope that they can lay a criminal charge. This is what Canada's doing while we're trying to get them in trouble at the ICC. And then at the same time, with Canada's been pulling all these things, they've been blocking us from getting any of our evidence against them because they're stalling, trying to run around and charge us with some kind of crime to arrest us. Okay, that's what the game. This is a cat and mouse game between Canada and my wife and I. Yeah.
They're trying to make legal and retroactively everything they did against us for the last 20 years.
Yeah, my wife just said it too. They're trying to make everything retroactively that was illegal that they've been committing against us for the last 20 years. They destroyed 9 of our laptops. The one before the last one we had, they literally erased all the data and Windows 10, which were the criminal files that I had written up about the crimes they had committed for the ICC. It was really bad. They hacked the laptop so bad I had trouble even writing everything up, let alone printing it off. And then after I had finished that particular part of our case, I was still more to do. And I went into the lab one day to look up one of the files. A few months after I hard copied the files I had finished, the screen of my laptop was entirely blue. The RCMP erased everything, including Windows 10. It was just a blue screen. Right, Jen?
Yeah.
She saw it.
It's like how they've changed, like, certain drugs are legal, like marijuana. 10 years ago, it wouldn't have mattered. If you got nailed for the possession of drugs, you get in trouble. Now, 10 years later, no one's going to care about that because marijuana's legal now. So they're trying to make everything they did 10 years ago that was illegal, if they've passed legislation now that makes it legal, it's obsolete everything we're saying.
And the only thing we can do now is post our videos on YouTube. But Canada and its government and police are restricting people from being able to see the videos. On my wife's Android phone, I posted a video of. I posted 2 videos on her phone on YouTube, in her account showing what they were doing to our iPhone. Finally, I was able to take a video with her phone of them moving the numeral characters on the phone screen of my iPhone for area codes of other countries and moving the numerals so that the area code would change and my phone would dial into another country. They've done that, and I got that on video yesterday twice. One in a 7-minute, 25-minute video, and the other one in a 1-minute video. And then when I scrolled down, when I dialed one of these numbers where they had moved one of the area code digits for Russia to the right of the location where it should be, I dialed the number, okay? And I still have to record it. I'm on my iPhone right now doing this, so I still have to record what my phone history shows, because it shows when I dialed the number where they had moved Russia's area code 499 and they moved the second 9 to the right, close to the local phone number that's in the numeral series. The call went to Bavaria, Germany. Okay, that's what happens when they change the area code on screen. Now I finally got it up on YouTube, but the problem with YouTube is Canada's restricting people from listening to the videos, and those videos are absolutely urgently needed to be sent to the ICC, because it needs to be explained to the ICC that that's the only way we can testify is on videos on YouTube. And now is the ICC going to be able to access them? Like if they If the prosecutor goes on his desktop computer and he goes into YouTube and types in my name in Europe, is he going to be able to see the videos? Well, we don't know. Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles 6 years ago, the receptionist there, who was kind of a friend of mine, because I knew her quite well, calling there for over a year or so, she would answer the phone, when she was off she told me she would go home on the weekend when the center's closed, and she would try and look up my videos, and for me to call her on Monday at the center when she's at work to see if she could access them, and I did. She told me she couldn't find them. Then I tried to tell her another idea to get at them, and she said she can only find one of them, and that was it. That's how much Canada and NATO are screwing people up from seeing our videos. Will the Vatican be able to see them? Well, I don't know. They might have tried already here in Ottawa. I have to go to the videos to see how many people have accessed them. Now, on the one video that's 2 weeks old, I've got 5 views. I should have 10,000 views, Lots of people know my address on YouTube. I've given it out in comments all over YouTube. Asked people to access the videos. And there's no increase at all in the numbers of views. So people probably tried, but they're having problems getting in there because Canada's creating them. It's just a death sentence is what this is. We need asylum. And I've indicated this to the Vatican. I've asked them to contact the ICC on our behalf and tell them the reality of the situation here, which is very bad. We've got a lot of criminal evidence on Canada and NATO, and there's also religious evidence as well, okay? Proving that things that are indicated biblically are actually happening, and that's part of the reason for these actions against us are also religiously motivated by evils of the government of Canada and their security as well as NATO. The Vatican is very powerful. It's just a question of, how high you can go. The higher you go, the better chance maybe we have. We're hoping that the Archbishop is being informed at the Vatican Embassy. We hope that His Grace is able to access things. The Vatican is very powerful. In spite of acts against Christianity by satanic governments like Canada's, in spite of their actions, the Vatican is extremely powerful. And in this case, I think this case does warrant the Vatican doing something about it before we get arrested and killed. Like, this is the reality. It's, they're very sneaky here. Extremely sneaky. The police are very sneaky. Okay? They always want to pull things against my wife and I, and this has been going on for a long time. One of their common character traits is they like to threaten us or pull something when there's no witnesses who see them doing these things. It's just very dangerous for us here. And we need, really, what we need is asylum, because this is never going to end. It's never going to end. They're constantly out to arrest us all the time. We're hated everywhere. In the courts, hated. We're hated by the police. We're hated by the government. We're hated by all the gangs. We're getting the threats from everywhere. And we don't go out a lot. My wife, we have to take turns going out. My wife goes out by herself and does the shopping. Sometimes I'll risk taking the scooter to go pick up the food from her because she has a bad back. Most times I won't, because, they'll see me leave and they may break into our house. It's just ridiculous to live like this. So, for me, I think now, I'm pushing hard for some kind of asylee recognition for my wife and I. We need asylum outside of Canada's grip. And they don't want that, because it means that if we're granted asylum, then a country will agree with us and its government, and we'll be able to expose Canada in that country, and all that Canada's embassy can do is complain. That's all they can do. The Canadian police won't be able to arrest us or threaten us or anything else if we're in the safety of another country. You know, the Russian Federation's answer to all of this has been, get visas and come to our country. They're offering that to everybody, but the problem with that is that doesn't answer the problem, because what we have here in Ottawa going on is 1933 Berlin, where all the embassies here seem to be bought off by Canada. Hitler in Parliament Hill bought off by trade agreements and profit margins, which is these embassies here are doing this with the Canadian government. The Canadian government is buying them every which way they can in agreements. And these governments don't want to have their relationship ruined with the Canadian government and trade agreements simply because they defended my wife and I. This is a clone copy of what happened in Berlin in 1933. I know it well. I'm an expert on the Holocaust. I'm an expert on the day-to-day operations of German Reich security and their actions against Jewish people and other peoples in the country, the political operations of embassies there of the time period, and they're doing the same thing here they did there with Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. They're doing the same thing, exact same thing, right? Here, like there, back in 33, League of Nations would only act against the Hitler Reich if one of their citizens had been apprehended by, the Gestapo or the Kripo, and were in jail. And in particular danger is any citizen that's in Germany who might be of Jewish descent from another country, and that was particularly dangerous. So the bottom line is that the UN here is repeating with Canada what the League of Nations did with Hitler, which resulted in 6 million people being killed, the Jewish race, mass murdered, 27 million Russians, and they're all repeating it here with my wife and I. That's what they're doing. Well, we're not alone. The problem is Canada's able to isolate each victim of their new Nazi colonial insecurity and their Nuremberg Law electronic applications and restriction electronic applications against other Canadians across the country. They're using the internet, okay, to destroy people's capability. It's the same as the Nuremberg laws where Jews weren't allowed typewriters or other gadgets, records and recorders, bicycles. It's all the same thing. They have applied every single Nuremberg law against my wife and I. Jews had no right to police protection. Jews had no right to seek remedies in the German courts. Canada's made it clear we don't have those rights neither. None. We don't have any of those rights. No protection by the police and no rights of civil defense or civil lawsuits or criminal charges of any kind against any of the creatures in and out of the government and security and on the streets that did these things to us and our property and our children.
And we have no privacy.
I already told them that. All right? I don't understand the Russian Federation embassy thinking. To me, it seems that I think that the diplomats there feel for us. The problem is, I think someone in Moscow is giving them orders, and I don't think it's President Putin, but I'm not sure. It depends on whether or not President Vladimir Putin has direct discussion threads with his ambassadors here. I don't know. So it's important for us to try and have the Vatican embassy get, maybe, I don't know if they can do it or if they want to do it, but try and get some kind of official at the Vatican in Rome to send President Putin a formal letter about, our relationship with their embassy here, and who in Moscow is basically, telling the embassy here to cover up our evidence. Accept it, right? They're accepting it, and they feel for us, but someone is telling them that it can't go public. Now, this is what's going on. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to accuse the Russian embassy here. Sometimes I get mad at them because they just won't do anything with the evidence. Which is reasonable, I guess, but, I don't believe it's because they don't care. They do care. That's the thing. I know they do. Oh, but I know they do, yes. But they're being told by somebody in Moscow, no. And so I think that part of it is they're angry too. Like, I don't think they're so much angry with me at my outbursts at their embassy sometimes. They haven't cut me off or anything. They haven't done that. They have not called the police on my wife and I and complained or anything, and I thank them for that. Obviously, they must agree with us, or they, I've been so rude at times, calling them on the phone that any other embassy would definitely call the RCMP on my wife and I. So, and they have not done that. So, how can I go against them? I'm sort of in a awkward situation because I know they care. I mean, I talked with some of their diplomats. I know they care and I know they believe us. Okay. But somebody in Moscow, I think, is telling them not to move on this locally. And whoever it is in Moscow that might be telling the embassy this, I think that maybe some of the Russian diplomats are angry with Moscow because I think some of them do want to really help my wife and I, and they're not allowed to. And I think that's it. It's kind of caught them sort of in the middle. But again, this is speculation on my part. I don't know. It's just speculation. I'm not going to accuse high-level officials above the ambassador in Moscow. I'm not outright going to do that. It's just one of the possibilities. The Russian, mind you, the standard policy of Vladimir Putin is that for his embassies, is they're not allowed to grant asylum inside their embassies to any foreign citizen. This is not just a policy for us, it's a policy for other people as well. But that doesn't mean that the Russian government can't embarrass Canada with key points of our evidence to at least stick some nails in Canada's government's and police coffins, maybe enough to get them to really back off. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Russians have told Canada formally, maybe, I don't know, maybe they have, but the police certainly didn't. If the Russians did, the police didn't care last year. I was legally there. My swastikas on my 3 signs accusing the police of being Nazis because they applied the Nuremberg laws against my wife and I and the restrictions, which we can legally prove. But the police just came right down and threatened to arrest me if I didn't pull the signs that had swastikas on them, accusing them of being Nazis, and stating that the swastika was illegal when it was not illegal at that time. So they tricked me. They would have arrested me based on a law that doesn't exist. That should tell people how badly they want to arrest me and my wife. I said again, they framed my wife at the Jean Coutu drugstore here. The security framed her in with the police. She went in with some stuff she bought from another drugstore. She went to the counter, showed the clerk her receipt, went to walk out. He said it was fine. She goes to walk out halfway to the door. He's chasing her down. And she's arguing with him there, saying, I showed you my receipt. Here's my receipt for the stuff I brought in the store with me from another store. And she was resistant, so he called security. Because my wife resisted him, because she told him, I showed you my receipt. And security came down and dragged her to his office, okay? They were trying to find a way to accuse her of stealing cat food that she had bought at another drugstore that they sell on their shelves called Friskies canned cat food. So it was all a setup. Now, if my wife had not had the receipt at all, right, and she had told the clerk, I've got these cans of cat food, I bought them at Shoppers Drug down the street, Friskies, and she didn't have a receipt, they would have arrested her. They would have had her charged with shoplifting simply because she didn't have the receipt. That's what they would have done, right? And then after that, she's going into stores. She's noticing since that happened, and she took it to court, and she won. Since that happened, she's noting that she's going into other stores, and security is watching her. You see what I'm saying? This is what Canada's pulled. Canada knows all about this. I told them. I told Canada. I told them. But they're not responding. That's typical Canada. The government's not responding to any of it. They're just ignoring our complaints, which are huge. We gave the package of evidence, the redacted package of evidence we gave the Russians and gave to member states. The first package went to the Liberal Transport Minister from the Trudeau government in 2017, whose name was Marc Garneau. He received it at his office. I painstakingly put it all together for him, in black and white and color, okay? And sent it to him. I called him back 2 weeks later. They wouldn't answer the phone. I kept calling and leaving messages and asking them, well, what are you going to do with this material I sent you about what Canada's done to my wife and I? They finally answered the phone and told me I'm harassing them and not to call them again. Okay, that was the response. I don't need to say all this. There needs to be action. We need an embassy to help us here. And we're going to need asylum. All right? Even if we could get to another country, I'd be doing the same thing there that we're doing here. And we'd have better access to the ICC and so on in another country, and Canada cannot stop us from giving statements. Understand, Canada is a full member of the International Criminal Court, and within that context, Canadians actually have a right to send emails to the ICC of suspicious activity that could be in violation of the Rome Statutes by Canada's governments and their police and courts. Canadians have a right to do that. But the Carney government is blocking Canadians from sending any kind of criminal allegations or statements of evidence or fact to the ICC by Canadians. He's also stopping Canadians from sending Buckingham Palace evidence, because that's what he did to us as well. He's doing these things. Okay, so we don't want to be part of this police state, so we want out. And we're going to need help from the government to get us out. And that's the bottom line. The United States and NATO states here, oh man, they make me sick. They helped Canada cover up everything. They handed all our evidence back to Canada, and Canada destroyed it. I can't count, let's see, two files to the U.S. consulate, given back to Canada, to the RCMP. Those files were never returned to us by the RCMP. 2009, we gave the RCMP a copy of my attempted murder report on my first offense when I was in jail for threatening the Premier of Ontario when I was drunk and intoxicated. And that 30-page thing we handed over to the RCMP, they turned around and they kicked us off their properties for a year because we tried to turn in my murder report in 2009, and they did not return the report. They burned it. So the RCMP are burning all our evidence that we're giving to member states. What has happened is that the police have run around and contacted Jewish organizations and everything else, telling them if they have contact with us to report it to them. I think that's kind of what's been going on. But these Jewish institutions have no idea what the police have been doing to us and the government, criminally illegal. But I've tried to tell them. Okay, they're just, the Jewish institutions here run by the Zionists in Israel doing whatever the police tell them. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter about the evidence, neither that we have. It just doesn't make any difference with the Jewish community in respect of the Nuremberg laws and Hitler's restrictions. And obviously the Jewish community and the Zionists have cut a deal with Canada's government at a higher level so that the Jews are fully protected from neo-Nazi Hitler policies historically being applied against them by the same police who are applying them against us. Clearly, there's been some kind of political deal with Jewish Zionists politicians on Parliament Hill, which also explains why none of them went after the government regarding the Hunka matter, an SS Waffen that you all saw in the House of Commons, them all clapping for this Nazi, and then 2 years later, I note that nobody took steps to confront the government in the House of Commons, not the Jewish House of Commons MPs, nor the Gentile ones, or the Christian ones, to pressure the government on handing him over to the Russians to be extradited for trial in Moscow. I mean, it's just, you can see where all this is leading. So, it's just a whole bunch of things, and they target my wife and I. And then I have all the visions on top of it. So many of the visions are coming from God and his angels. Some are not. Some are coming from, I believe they're able to somehow they're somehow able to place visions in the minds of people that sleep. I heard this from, now I know who told me this. It was this Mike Around the World fellow on this Pastor Paul Begley show on Thursday nights on YouTube, Paul Begley Prophecy. and I believe it was this Mike, who's a scientist, who said that the governments have the technology to give people visions in their unconscious state. I completely believe that. Okay? Canada thinks that they can keep trying to create a criminal case against me or my wife or both of us. But there's a problem there because our criminal evidence outweighs theirs in seriousness by 15 million %. So that's what I'm saying, right? We need to get Canada criminally charged with crimes against us. Okay, that's what needs to be done. That's a tall order. And in order to do that, you need help from a member state of the UN. All the member states of the UN here are doing the same thing they did, as I said earlier, in Berlin from 1933, virtually almost to the end of the war. They're all making trade deals and agreements with Hitler, and that has resulted in their inability to go against Hitler and help people in Germany by bringing them into their embassy and just accepting the fact they'll lose all their trade agreements and royalties from Adolf Hitler to defend people whose lives are in danger. People's lives in danger by a Nazi government, like the Carney government, for example, and the Trudeau government, are not valued. These governments are valuing their trade and their cash and profits, shaking hands and playing golf with Canada, which has resulted in them prejudicing victims in my country who are in danger by the government's security and their corrupted, filthy courts. And we don't want to go down that path. We've already been there. I can't warn other Canadians about it because they can't access my videos. These policies, these bills this government is trying to pass in the House of Commons, these bills are all of the bills, and their contents are everything they did to my wife and I electronically through the internet that was illegal. I've already pointed this out. What does it take for the deaf, dumb, and blind that we have contacted to say to my wife and I, you better get down to our embassy right away? This should be the case. The other excuse by NATO states is that Canada is not a third world state. So because they seem to think that third world states and embassies of foreign states in third world states have some kind of special status to grant asylum on their soil for people running to them from South American countries, and their governments and their corrupted police running to our embassy in foreign states requesting asylum. Canada plays on that one big time. They don't apply the Nuremberg laws and restrictions on immigrants. They only apply it to people with criminal evidence against them. How much criminal evidence did the Jewish race and other people in Germany of other race have on Hitler and his security? Lots. Where did that evidence go? Where? The Gestapo would simply destroy it and arrest the victims and charge them with something. End of story. And that is the position of the Canadian government. And I'm going to stop this video now because I know I'm speaking through my breath. And I'll be lucky if one person sees the video in the next 2 weeks. And it'll be selected by Canada, of course. How many embassies can see our videos? I don't know. They're all bucking to, even the ones that are angry with Canada have nothing to do with them. Unfortunately, they will not act neither, even though they're against Canada for some reason, which means that they're only against Canada for as long as they have a dispute regarding trade or some other matter outside of Canada's murders of people and violations of people's rights of exposure of the Canadian government. This is it. All these countries that are against Canada are not, the problem is these countries that I speak of are not against Canada because of Canada's police state policies of threatening to arrest and criminally charge people who have criminal evidence against them and their security in courts. That's the problem. So my wife and I, we want to overcome that, and we want Canada to find out through our case that they just can't do that and keep getting away with it for almost 20 years. And they're out there doing this to other people. And that's the other problem. And by a state acting on our behalf and willing to break ties with the Canadian government for our sake will help a lot of Canadian people, because it's going to stick a big dent in Carney's reputation abroad if our case is published. So, as far as the Russians go, I don't know. There's some middle ground there. I know they care. I know they do, but I don't know. Does their conscience get to them? I'm sure it does. Maybe the diplomats are angry there, maybe at me and Moscow. They just don't show it because they're stuck in the middle of something where they have been giving a policy maybe from Moscow that's actually incorrect in this particular case. I just don't know. And I'm not going to go by what people in the horoscopes are saying to me. This filthy government here, I've noted today in one of the MSN horoscopes, they've only got 5 or 6 different ones for Aries today. Each one has mixed messages, but there's one in particular which basically says, I'm really stupid to not throw in the towel with the Russians, okay, or something like that. That it should be clear to me that this team player that I've been approaching is just not going to do anything. So why am I not just letting it go? Well, the problem here is that simply that I don't believe that the Russian diplomats in their embassy here agree with whatever policy they're following in this case, and they're upset about it. And then on the other hand, they're getting upset with me because I get angry once in a while. And I really shouldn't. I'm going to curb that. I'm absolutely going to curb that because that doesn't, yelling and screaming on the phone and crying and begging really doesn't do any good. And it probably does reach to them, and they may be angry. Maybe not at me necessarily. They may be angry with their government because they're stuck in the middle. You've seen those movies where, I've seen movies where in the olden days, going back 60, 70 years, where some citizens approach the American consulate, from another country, and they won't let them in, and their lives are in danger, and they won't do it. The duty officer wants to let them in, right? But he's making phone calls to the people above him in the embassy, and the embassy saying, no, you can't let them in. Someone in the embassy is doing that, right? And it just gets to be such a desperate situation that finally, if they're lucky, they get in. That's not the American government of today. They want to get rid of people who are endangered by their governments. They don't want to help people. Another item before I go is simply that we have grounds now for Article 17 from the ICC. I have the receipts of 2 express post letters to 2 different presidents of the United States White House that were blocked from being received by them. This is evidence. It's enough evidence to prove that Canada's been blocking all our mail. Okay, letter mail, emails, mails by express post. They've been getting stolen, and not just to the 2 presidents, but also letter mails to Buckingham Palace and so on, and also diplomats of the UN. Okay, it's possible that, because I tried to bring in the Russians into their mission in New York City, it's possible that NATO states in the Security Council went against me and wouldn't do anything for the simple fact that they have this hatred for the Russian people in government, which I just don't understand. It's ridiculous. They have no right to hate the Russian government. So anyway, better go. Shalom, God bless, and I'll upload this.